Thanks for joining us for the fourth and final episode of Write Your Own Sci-Fi series. Now that you have your characters sorted out and you know all about the world they live in, and you've thought of an interesting hook for your story, it's time to give your characters something to do. In other words, you need to think up a story for them. The things that happen in a story are also known as the plot. The key to a good plot is nearly always a big problem. The bigger the problem that your characters have to solve, the more interesting the story is likely to be for your readers. Most stories can be broken down into three main parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. That probably sounds a bit obvious, but if we look closely at these three parts of a story, we find that most stories have quite a lot in common. As I talk about each of these parts, I'll tell you a little bit about how I approached them while I was writing the Max Booth story Film Flip. The beginning of a story usually has a few common parts. At the beginning, we learn about when the story takes place and where it happens. We also meet the main characters and find out about the problem they're going to have to solve in the story. A story often kicks off with something unusual happening to one of the characters. This thing that happens sets the whole story in motion. Maybe the character meets someone new, or finds something interesting, or loses something, or gets invited to go to an interesting place. In Film Flip, the event that sets the story in motion is when Max is given a 400-year-old film canister. It quickly becomes his mission to find out if there are any long-lost photos on the film reel inside the canister. To begin with, this is a small problem, but it soon gets much bigger. In the middle of a story, we see what the character does to try to solve their problem or succeed in their mission. We also see them dealing with other problems that pop up along the way. The problems usually get worse and worse for the character, and we see how they respond to the problems they come up against. The way they do this tells us a lot about their strengths and weaknesses, and gives them the chance to grow and learn. In Film Flip, Max visits a photographic society disguised as an adult, to see if the society can help him examine the old reel of film. The society president, Professor Snarkle, realises that the film could be extremely valuable. She develops it into a photographic negative and discovers that it contains a long-lost photo, a picture of an old building. When Max's disguise fails and Professor Snarkle realises that he's tricked her into developing the film, she tries to detain Max and have him return to the orphanage he escaped from 2 years ago. Max escapes from Snarkle with the photo negative and finds a way to view the building photo in colour. He goes to see if the building in the photo still exists, not realising that he's walking into a trap. Snarkle and her helpers are expecting him. At the end of your story, the problem comes to a head. It's do or die for your character. In most stories, the character finally solves the story's main problem. All the questions that your reader has about the characters and the story are answered, and the main character often learns an important lesson or discovers something important about themselves. Perhaps they've discovered their own bravery or kindness or cleverness. In Film Flip, the story ends with Max escaping from Professor Snarkle and her helpers, and finally using the photo negative to project a huge image that scares them all away. Max hands the negative over to the museum and proudly attends its unveiling at the museum the following week. All is well, and Max can now safely look forward to his next adventure. I hope that gives you an idea of how a story with a beginning, middle and end can work. Some stories are much simpler than this, and some are much more complicated. It's up to you to decide what sort of story best suits the characters and world that you've created. I really hope you've enjoyed these videos, and more importantly, I hope they've helped you come up with some exciting science fiction stories of your own. Storytelling, whether it's science fiction or any other type of story, has a great power to bring people together and help us all understand each other a little better. Thanks for coming on the journey with me. Now pick up those pens and get writing.